Hey Rupert, how are you doing?
I'm all right, thanks. How are you?
Very well, thanks for your time. First of all, the novel came out like 40 years ago. I was wondering, was it ever a big question whether your show is set in the present or in the past?
I don't believe so. When I first was involved in the show, there was always a belief that we were going to be telling a contemporary story, and a lot of the changes made from the book, um, and taking kind of the adaptation and being able to sort of make it our own to an extent, I think dealt with that. Exploring a world which, interestingly, is not that different from 1980s America. With
Mhm.
the notion of sort of big big governments and globalization was sort of the focused on Japan and the rise of economic superpowers. Um, that they have different faces now, but they're still there. And America and those in America still ask those questions as to, how long will they remain a kind of dominant superpower?
And of course, it's impossible to do a one-to-one adaptation. It feels like an impossible thing to do. But I was wondering, did you only do changes you felt were necessary, or did you also do, like uh, personal creative changes?
Well, you'd have to ask Neil Cross, the writer and the showrunner, really, because he obviously is the one who's taken the book and really made it something that he it's his own. I come on as the director to work with his scripts and work with him.
Mhm.
So I would say that the changes were born out of choices that he'd made, really. Um, and then my role in it is to, find the tone with him that works and find a visualization of his work that meets what he had in his head.
There's a line in the show that goes like, you promise and you promise, but you don't deliver. So I was
Yeah.
wondering, when it comes down to your profession as a director, did you ever do a big promise, and if so, how did you make sure that you deliver as a director?
Oh, goodness. I always have to promise and then I have to deliver. Uh,
Okay.
that's part of my job, I guess. Yeah, I mean, do you mean that creatively or practically or everything? How would you ask that question?
Yes, on a creative level.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the big ask of everybody was to evoke, in the episodes that I directed, the first two episodes, was to evoke the notion of geographically where we were, Stockton, California, the Northern California landscape, the John Steinbeck world, right up
Mhm.
against the kind of very modern, materialistic, um, 21st century America, the clash of those two things. And as
Yeah.
I'm sure you know, most of the time you don't get to shoot in the locations that the story's set. And in our case, we didn't shoot in Northern California. We shot in Los Angeles, around Los Angeles, and
All
in
right.
Southern California, and we shot in Mexico. Um, so for me, it was always about holding on to the identity of Northern California and being able to create that within the frame. And I feel like we achieved that. Yeah.
And what's funny about Ellie, I believe, is that he calls the journey an adventure. So I was
Yeah.
wondering, what's the craziest adventure you've experienced so far?
In my life,
Yeah.
um, quite a few, I guess. I worked as a deckhand on a boat when I was 18 for a year and a half, going down the east coast of Africa, and we stopped for the night in Mogadishu in 1992, and that was probably the craziest night I've ever had. So, and it
All
wasn't
right.
a good one. So I'll leave it at that.
What we spoke about. I told the fact that the book came out like 40 years ago. What do you believe is it in its core? What is it that makes this story so timeless? What do you believe it still works all these years later?
It's a good question. I think there's a dreamer in all of us, and I
Mhm.
think at its center, Ali Fox is exactly that. Somebody who really thinks you can achieve the impossible, and
Yeah.
most of the time gets there as a result of it, or very nearly gets there. And I feel like there's something incredibly compelling about those personalities. We're either fortunate enough to kind of know those people or be around those people, um, but I think they can be dangerous, they can be unpredictable,
Mhm.
but they keep you alive, you know. And I think Ali's
Yeah,
one of those magicians in life, and to build a whole show around him, it's like telling the story of Jim Jones before he became Jim Jones. It's a fascinating
yeah,
character, and you know, there's a fine line between a genius and a crazy guy.
absolutely. Amazing. Rupert, thank you so much for your time today. All the best for your
Hey,
show, of
thanks.
course, and see you next time.
Yes, all the best. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.